What is Tukdam?
So there's a different levels of articulating what is Tukdam, right? So I'm sure you have heard about Tukdam, you have some understanding of what is Tukdam, and most of your listeners either have heard about it or might not have much understanding of what is Tukdam. And so Tukdam literally, I mean, in a lay people term, if we try to break it down, this two syllable of tuk and tham, tuk generally means consciousness or mind, right? And so, but when we contextualize this particular mind or consciousness in with regard to Tukdam, then we are looking at extremely subtle mind or consciousness, right? And so not the consciousness that you and I have right now, which is very much governed by our five faculty or five senses, right? And so as we are talking, I'm also sort of a constantly bombarded by everything that it's in my vicinity. And so I sort of get a little bit of feedback as I talk to you because I hear my voice a little bit, but I also see things here and I smell things. But when you go to this extremely subtle consciousness, all of those sensory stimuli has been deemed and those has been shut down. The thumb means to sort of embrace it and to hold on to it. And so
Like tumble?
Tuktam,
Like
exactly,
not
yeah.
humble? Okay.
Yeah, Tambo.
Grasp.
So when you are sort of going through the stages of dying, and then especially through the uh, through the lens of Tibetan Buddhist practice, you go to an extent where your extremely subtle consciousness is there, and you kind of hold on to that. So there's a very lay person's way of explaining it. But then if you go a little bit on the higher level, then it has a completely different meaning, right? And so Tug means having that subtle consciousness, then you can use a particular anchor or a reference to write on, right? And so, for instance, if I have a very close association or connection with my root teacher, so for almost all the Tibetans, when we're close to dying, we want to listen to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teaching, his words. But also sometimes when you bring it a little closer, then you would have your own personal tutor or teacher. Then we might have parents or family members or friends. And so you use that when you are in extremely subtle consciousness. And tham means also could be say tamzik. Tamzik means, that again, that very close bonding that one has developed. And so sometimes when someone is in state of that extremely subtle consciousness where you are completely driven by non-divided attention, right? Completely focused because now my whole sensory faculty has sort of diminished or suspended. And so I don't have to hear anything. I don't have to see this beautiful uh, deep blue sky and all the white snow that I could see through the patio. Or I can just look at my own self, like at the camera, and I'm seeing how I'm talking and how I appear out there. So my whole focus is so much on one particular thing, which is on the teachings and words of my root Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama's teaching. So that's really important to have that. Now, if you get to the highest level, then someone who is in the state of that mind or that subtle consciousness, then you contemplate, then you meditate on the state of Toni. So Toni means emptiness. So emptiness is loosely translated as these days we use a term like interdependent nature, dependent origination. In Tibetan we use that. And so you already are in touch with your root teacher. So whether it being His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whether it being your personal tutor, your teacher, or someone who's so close to you, and you're already in touch with that, and therefore you feel secure, you feel very kind of grounded, and your heart power. Most of these practitioners that I go to talk to, they will use the term like Nyingdop. So Nyingdop is really like, I mean, loosely translated as heart power, but it's a confidence that is rooted in deep level of devotion and connection to all the sentient beings, including yourself and your teachers, right? And then you contemplate and meditate on Tongyi and interdependent nature. And that focus and deep meditation on interdependent nature sort of really liberates you further from one who's already being liberated to some extent compared to people like me or all the people who haven't had that sort of a practice, right? And so that's the highest level of how we articulate Tukdam. And therefore, whether someone is simulating, whether someone is sort of engaging in Tukdam practice while alive, they would present a very different presentation. Or someone is close to dying, then they will completely sort of protect their body and delay any level of changes that would happen when someone is clinically dead. And so again, we can talk a lot about what is Tukdam and the mechanism, but this is what's really happening and sort of a function and the cultural reference of Tukdam.